Hi, everybody. Hi. Last time I talked about ways that the mind helps us to self-sabotage, basically. And I wanted to carry on from that because very often we do things which we think are in our own best interest, but actually, in terms of what the unconscious mind is receiving, it can be very unhelpful. So once we know a little bit about how the unconscious mind works, then we can be more mindful of how to go about things and what to think and what can be quite damaging and what can be really, really useful and really beneficial. So I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the mind and then give you a bit of a scenario so you can see how it's really easy to fall into the trap of actually self-sabotaging yourself again. So the unconscious mind, it loves to serve. It loves to serve and it loves to protect you as well from any danger. But it's really, really literal. It takes everything really literally. Doesn't have the sophistication of language of the conscious mind. It's a little bit like that 5-year-old that we were talking about last week. So if you were to tell a 5-year-old a joke that did twists on language and things like that, play on words, they probably wouldn't get it. And that's a little bit like your unconscious mind. So when you're thinking about what you want, you've got to be really clear and really specific and steer clear of saying what you don't want. You need to say what you do want. Okay, I want to give you a bit of an example. Let's think about something that you're anxious about or nervous about. And if you're an equestrian, it might be going out on a hack. It could be competing. It could be getting on. It could be anything that you're anxious about. And if you're not an equestrian, it could be anything at all. It could be something to do with work, giving a presentation, being part of a meeting that you know you've got to stand up and put your views forward. So it could be anything at all that you are anxious about. And consciously, you start thinking about it before you do it. And you start thinking about the worst case scenario. You start thinking about the what ifs. And your unconscious mind is there in the background, listening in to all the thoughts that you're thinking about, all these what ifs, what could happen, disaster movies, and it's listening in. But because it's so literal, it thinks that those are all those things are really, really going to happen. And more than that, if you've imagined something happening, your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality and between imagination. So it already thinks, if you've thought that worst case scenario, it already thinks it's happened like that. So if you've thought of that worst case scenario more than once, and who hasn't? I mean, we're probably going into the thousands, aren't we? The number of times that we think about the disaster movies. Your unconscious mind thinks that, 1,000 times it's ended in complete chaos and everything's just kind of gone completely pear-shaped. So when you come to do the thing in reality, you go out to do the ride, you stand up to do your presentation, whatever it is, your mind's already thinking, well, do you know what? They've told me that this is really, really scary and we've had a go 1,000 times and 1,000 times it's worked out really, really bad. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to protect them from all that terrible stuff happening. So then it goes into protection mode. And this is where we start to feel really bad physically because the unconscious mind controls the body as well. So it thinks, right, I need to get them out of this situation because this situation they've told me is horrendous. It's really scary. It's really frightening. It's kind of up there as something life-threatening. Desperate need to get them out of the situation. So the unconscious mind thinks, well, what I'll do is I'll get lots of adrenaline going because that usually makes you feel reasonably bad. you've got your butterflies, you've got your sweaty palms, you might have a dry mouth, you can't speak, can't think, jelly legs, all of those things. But still, you put yourself into that situation where you're going out for the ride or you're doing your presentation, and the mind thinks, oh my God, they're still hanging around this really scary situation. So what else can I do on top of that? So I better get some more adrenaline going. How about some stress hormones as well? Make you feel really, really, really bad. And obviously then we do feel bad, but in spite of that, we know that it's not the end of the world, and we do go and do the thing that we've been thinking about. But you know, it will continue to make you feel bad until you put yourself in a position of safety. So you get away from doing your presentation, or you get away from the horse, and it will continue to do that as part of a habit then, each and every time you go to do it. So it's almost knowing that we need to be really, really specific and really careful when we're thinking about these what ifs, by stopping ourselves, basically, by not thinking of the disaster movie. So a couple of things that you can do before you fall into this and educate your unconscious mind that what you're doing is, you know, similar to being chased by a tiger or something. Then as you lapse into your what if thinking and you catch yourself, you can do a couple of things just to stop yourself and get rid of that vicious circle of constantly going round and round, and have your mind try and protect you more and more from this scary thing. So one thing you can do is, in your mind, inside your head, or out loud if you're on your own, you can say stop really, really firmly. So you get your best kind of teacher voice in your head and you go stop firmly, and you believe it. Another one, probably one of my favorites, is you say delete, delete, delete. Get out of your head. Delete, delete, delete. Enough is another one. Yeah, like your parents would tell you off if you were doing something annoying. Enough. Stop. But anything at all that gets you out of that what if thinking would be just perfect. So thinking about something else, making yourself give the what if movie a really happy ending or a really silly ending, having really something ridiculous happen just so that you burst out laughing. Any of those types of things. It's the same idea that a lot of people have when they go out hacking and they sing, and you hear people singing on horseback round the lanes to keep the nerves down, because what they're doing is they're distracting themselves. Other people might breathe and count footfalls. So they may breathe in for 4 footfalls and out for 4 footfalls. And that counting and breathing gives you something to think about that gets rid of the disaster movie again. So be careful what you give your mind. If you give it something bad, delete it or stop, or tell yourself that it's the old you. You used to do that, but it's the old you. Anything like that, that just breaks the cycle. And just be really clear on what you do want. Focus on what you do want in your what if movies. So change them from negative, horrible disaster movies to what if I have a fabulous time type of movie. And you'll notice just by doing these little things that as you build a new habit, things get easier. And that habit of automatically releasing the adrenaline, making you feel bad, making you feel as though you want to run, all of those things will dissipate if you practice often enough and soon enough as you start thinking about those movies. So I will see you all again next week. let me know in the comments what you do to distract yourself, because there's always some that are really, really creative, and I love to hear what people do to stop these disaster movies and what ifs running. So I will see you next week. Take care for now. Bye.